Hello, everyone. Good morning, Europe. Good afternoon and good evening for some of you. So my name is Laetitia Lim. I'm the CEO of Quividi. I'm really glad to be with you today and with also our strategic partners, Intel and Samsung, for our Smart Retail webinar, which is also part of the London Digital Signage Week. So I'm going to actually leave the stage to the gentleman next to me, above me actually on the screen, so Adrian Exton, who's been a long run partner of Quividi, a company based in UK and Ireland, in charge of providing actually image processing based tools for retailers and advertisers. So Adrian, I mean, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Laetitia. So everyone's now experienced some aspect of COVID lockdown and see how that's affected shopping. And more people, of course, have got more proficient with using online shopping. And now we're starting to think about going back and stores opening up again. How can those stores get or reinvent, if you like, the physical shopping experience and recapture the market share they might have lost? And what part would we've brought together three individuals with a global view from Samsung and from Intel and Quividi to discuss this. So on the stage, we'd like to introduce you to David Dobson, who's Intel's Global Industry Director for Retail, Hospitality and Consumer Goods. He's based in Bath in the UK. I'm in the UK as well. And Henrik Hansen is Samsung Europe's Retail Business Development Manager, and he's hooking in from Copenhagen in Denmark. Now, this is a standalone event. We don't have a hard cutoff time, so we could talk for days. But we'll try and keep to about no more than 50 minutes. And we're going to break the session into three components or three discussion points, and then open up for a Q&A at the end. And you can ask questions by clicking on that little arrow symbol at the top right-hand corner of your browser, that little sort of line with an arrow. And you'll find you can open up a panel for asking questions. And my colleagues in Quividi in Paris will aggregate those questions and send them to me, and I'll ask them on your behalf. Now, if you registered and you're not here, you won't hear me say this, but we're going to record the whole event, and then we'll send you a link and you can play it back later. And sections of this will be available as well on the Quividi website. So let's get started. We know that in-store digital signage for retail is rarely connected with the retailer's ecosystem, and they tend to operate in isolation with very little data-driven integration or any intelligence. And we hear that 70% of large retailers are equipped with screens, and 52%, which is a significant number, still expect to use them better to personalize the shopper's journey. Now, that data came from Samsung in France. They have a smart retail barometer, and it's pretty up to date. So David, if I can start with you, do you agree with that premise that retailers are not using digital signage as a strategic channel to engage customers?
Yeah, Adrian, thanks. And thanks, by the way, to Quividi and Samsung for inviting me onto the call. Always great to have these conversations, especially as we're all kind of stopped from meeting in person. It's great to have these video conversations. So thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I mean, I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves. I mean, it's not 100% of retailers that aren't doing this particularly well. I mean, as always, there's some areas where people are thinking about it as a strategic asset, but I think it's probably fair to say that there's also a large number of retailers that have kind of implemented digital signage over the years. You know, initially some great content, some fantastic screen layouts, you know, placed in the right place, all of that good stuff created an initial wow, or, you know, got an initial impact. But in terms of then what do they do next with those assets, I think that's where I think they've struggled, and I think there's a great opportunity for us to show how it can be done better, and how, as you rightly said, you could start to use these signs as a more strategic asset. You know, there's a couple of things that they need to start thinking about in terms of that discussion. I mean, obviously, content is super important, and I know some of the other guys are going to talk a little bit about content. Obviously, the screens themselves, it's a fundamental piece of the technology. That's another one of the keys. I think the other thing, and guess where I would sort of start this is as opposed to just having signage and having displays, it's kind of how does it work in terms of your strategy for engaging your customer? I mean, often people talk about customer journey or shopper journeys, but if you think about it as an engagement with your shopper, and how do you use signage to improve that engagement and improve their experience in that store, then you start to think of it in a more strategic way. There's a couple of people who are doing this, in my view, over the last couple of years particularly well. I mean, one of the obvious areas is some of the sports brands that have kind of integrated quite nicely some of that signage, where you can personalize they can personalize some of the content for the shoppers, allow them to use it as part of their selection process for choosing. I mean, I'm a runner. I love running, and when you go and pick the right shoe for you when you're going running, that's super important. And digital signage and some of the tools that those brands and those stores have started to roll out to support that selection process has been, in my view, quite an engaging way of using this technology. Mm-hmm. And then maybe a second example would be kind of telling the brand story. We're starting to see a lot of plant-based food products. It's growing huge, very, very fast in the marketplace. But telling the story about what are the ingredients in there, where have they sourced it from, how sustainable are those products. So some of that core messaging that you want to get across in support of the products, I think, is another nice strategic way of using some of this technology. Mm-hmm. Just a couple of examples where people are thinking about it more strategically, as you said.
And well, we know that, excuse me, we know Walmart have introduced a new store design, and the activation takes place on the shopper's screen in their pocket rather than the digital signage screens. So now I'll swivel to Henrik now. So and I know we had a bit of trouble with your audio, so you might have to shout, but we'll see. What's Samsung doing to make sure that retail screens deliver a measurable ROI so that all this pays off?
Yes, thank you, Adrian, and again, thanks for having me here on this. So give me a thumbs up if the sound is okay. Okay, I'll speak louder. So it's a good question, and it's absolutely a valid question if a digital signage investment will actually pay off. The short answer is yes, it does, and we see plenty of good examples. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely, there is. That's definitely room to improve. So at Samsung, we have defined three key elements for an successful ROI. So the three of them are being content. As David mentioned before, it's absolutely number one here. So the second is the total cost of ownership. And lastly, it's the use of the data. So first of all, for the content has to be relevant. It has to look good on high quality displays that will last for a long time. So that's a key element. With Samsung, we have a full lineup of displays, from LCD displays to LED, fine pixel LED, and all the way to our premium the wall micro LED technology. So in the digital world that we live in, the brick and mortar retailers, they have this very short window of time to get the attention of the shoppers when they enter the store and they enter the shopping journey. So digital signage is still a key element to get the attention, to get into that shopping journey. So that's actually absolutely a key element. The second factor I would mention here is the total cost of ownership. One of the things I like to highlight is Samsung use of system-on-chip technology, which is a chip embedded into the display that enables you to run the content playback from the chip. It enables you to have device monitoring and device control. It actually eliminates the need of additional hardware, like additional cables, power supplies, less power consumption, less maintenance, of course. So that's overall improving to keep the cost down. Third factor is the use of data. If content is king, data is absolutely key. And whoever retailer really take ownership of their customers' data and leverage from that to take to start the customer journey, can improve in building their brand loyalty, the lifetime value, retain the business from the customers. That's a key element. So digital signage in the stores is a key element as well. And we still see research conclude that a lot of last-minute shopping decisions in the stores are actually being influenced by the digital signage.
Mm-hmm.
And if you add the analytics and the measurements in the stores and leverage from that, that's a good use of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say beside our full lineup of displays and hardware, we have a CMS solution called Magic Info, but we also have our Samsung Smart Signage platform, which enables our partners to develop and run their own CMS on Samsung displays. We have a mechanism within this Samsung Smart Signage platform that would actually allow you to pull out record, keep a track record of the content being played, playback records. And we're working closely with Quividi to exploit this already available feature even further, utilizing their technology and their ability to make use of the data. So that's a good example of an ingredient in the ROI.
Great.
So it's really a combination of these three factors. I don't see it as having the need for having the most displays or the biggest displays. It's really about reaching the right audience with the right content at the right time, and using data and analytics is a key factor for that.
Mm-hmm. That feeds nicely to my question to Letitia. And I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, really. Is digital signage in retail being used at its full potential?
So I actually do agree with what David and Henrik just said previously, and yes, Adrian, I think it could be better. Actually, that's the way we see the things at Quividi. Actually, we believe that intelligence starts first by connecting the pipes, of the different systems available, in store, and only when you are actually enabling the data to flow in an automated way, then you can start to be able to leverage on the insight and the intelligence those data are going to bring to your business. And then you can really start to basically leverage on all the type of data you have and also the first party data you have in store to try to actually optimize the communication on the screens in order to engage better the shopper at the moment of truth. And when we talk about data, definitely we are thinking of Quividi's real-time audience data, demographics data, attention time, presence, mood, but not only. And there's a bunch of very valuable data available at the retailers right now, POS data, weather, mobile data, heat mapping, all kinds of data that actually today are living in silos. So connecting them definitely will able to provide the best shopping experience to their customers. And somehow I think if I can draw a picture, it's pretty similar to what's happening actually in programmatic digital out of home, in the sense that it starts by building the pipes. So that layers of automation, and then we add the layers of data to power smart campaigns. So we really strongly think that retailers have to embrace this programmatic approach when it is about the in-store screens experience. So, and the way we see Quividi's mission into that is actually to mix match, all those different data, ours with, all the data I just mentioned, and use AI to actually extract consumer insight to optimize the in-store communication and drive more sales. So maybe I can share with you actually a project we ran with Dufry. So the #1 travel retail stores. Actually, the Dufry marketing wanted to optimize the communication on their in-store screens, and they wanted to know basically what type of content works best on which screen for which shopper profile. So what we did was actually to measure, we have them to measure the ROI of the three different type of content, more promotional related, more brand related, on 3 different type of screens located at 3 different touch points of the shopper journey in store, at the entrance of the store, in the promotional area, and at the cash register. And we basically delivered a bunch of very interesting insight for their marketing team to adjust further on their strategy. And one maybe findings I can share with you that they really love was that actually we found out that the male, so you guys might feel concerned, male population actually were watching, campaigns 18% less than women. So they were engaging less with the screen. However, when the content was actually relevant to them, they are actually taking immediate action, in the sense that they were actually engaging up to 50%, higher attention time. And most importantly, they were buying, much more the product that was shown on the screen. So we measured like up to 400% increase of the sales of the product that was actually displayed on that relevant campaigns towards male population. So definitely that for us, it's really proven by X and YZ that actually you can drive higher ROI in store when you are just leveraging on all the technology to optimize the communication on the signage that you have inside your venues. Yeah.
I guess ROI, we used to always talk about ROI being the relative cost of digital signage against producing posters that we put up. And now it's got far more sophisticated. And by making content, we talk about content is king, and now context is king. So it's all about becoming more advanced in that argument. We'll go on to the next phase, the next thing we wanted to discuss, and that's shopper behavior. Before COVID, people say BC, before COVID, people and stores were happy to browse, take time. We wanted high footfall in the stores, and we wanted people to spend their time looking around. And now in this new world, however temporary it might be, people are encouraged to be quick and go through the venue quickly. But somehow we have to increase the basket size. So this is all about trying to help the customer find what they want and make faster decisions. So we'll take it in turns going first. So Henrik, it's your turn first. How is Samsung working in this? Are you developing an understanding or intelligence on how different screens engage with different people? You can imagine how there might be a DNA approach to screens. What are you finding?
Yes, certainly we are. So we have looked into this, and the specific technology developed for this is called Samsung Insight. And just to bring up a few highlights on that, that's a tool making it able to collect and analyze proof of play history with your POS data. So basically what it does is you can compare the content played with your sales data. So this is one of the features that provide you with a content ROI. So this Samsung Insight solution is again is perfectly complemented by the Quividi screen DNA technology, which basically will add a further dimension and depth into the analytics that we provide. So that's one of the key features to bring up here, definitely.
Adrian, you are on mute, I think.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's a shame. I was coughing quietly to myself, so I muted it, and now I'm talking to myself. I'll do that again. Thanks for that. We were talking about the first moment of truth and the moment of truth, the point at which shoppers buy something, and using influence those shoppers. So Laetitia, I'm asking you, if you didn't realize, isn't it the role of the screens to help do that influencing?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, and of course it is, and screens are part of an overall in-store experience, right? So now definitely the way we see things at Quividi is that in order for retailers to really, use that as its full potential, it really is critical for them to make sure that the communication on those screens are on the always on, always relevant mode. So what I mean by that is that actually at some moment, you know, the screens are into a one-to-many type of engagement, you know, whereas, and then some other moments it's a one-to-few or one-to-one. So how do you make that those screens are smart enough to basically switch, you know, in real time and basically be as relevant and bring, like you said, Adrian, this layer of contextualization, which make those screens as personalized as possible, although they are in a public, space, right? So that's the challenge. And basically for us, the only way or one of the most effective way to do that is to embark on a data journey. So retailers, we are encouraging them to really, you know, embark into that data journey, which will enable them to basically provide this best experience about showing the relevant message, you know, whenever actually there's an audience or not in front of the screens. And the field of possibilities, you know, is vast. Now at Quividi, we see ourselves helping, retailers to achieve that goal in three different ways. So before a project starts, basically we've been supporting clients who are actually deploying thousands of screens before they make that big investment decision. Okay, what we're doing with them is basically we are providing what we call predictive analytics. So we are leveraging on our 60 billion data set available, that we have accumulated throughout the years to basically provide them advice about where actually is the best location inside their store to start to deploy the screens, you know, and that's the beginning. So if you make it right from the start, we all know how critical it is, you know, that it's really hard, you know, to somehow, you know, erase things and retrofit things because we are in the physical world, right? So definitely that's our first approach. Before a project start, we try to basically make it having the highest chance of success with providing a predictive analytics. Then when the project is deployed and it's running and content are played on the screens, what we do usually is we also use our data science to actually provide prescriptive analytics. So what I mean by prescriptive analytics is definitely really that we, you know, identify gaps, content that actually is underperforming, although it's playing, and then we help them to enable the retailers to, I would say, on the go, whenever it's relevant, to actually optimize that loop. So that is the second type of ways we can support, our retailers with our data. And the last one, a really obvious one, is once, you know, a campaign has run on the screens, we definitely provide, post-campaign analysis. Okay, for the marketing team or the communication team to know, you know, if actually that campaign has been effective or have managed to reach the audience they wanted to reach, you know, which sometimes, you know, it doesn't, to be frank, and help them to enable them to learn and improve their communication moving forward. So that's basically the three different ways we see us bringing value to retailers in that sense. And maybe I'll end up with a project that we ran for one of the top grocers in Asia Pacific, who is now actually deploying 3,000 plus screens in store. And basically we were working with them at the really early stage, so before the project starts, to tell them actually where to start investing in screens. Where was the first, if there was one location inside their stores, they have to start with the signage. Where was that location?
Okay.
And now they are entering into this journey of deploying 3,000 screens. So we're pretty happy of that.
Yeah. And so with this change in shopper behavior, what's the Intel global view? You can bring us the global view.
So just check I'm not on mute, Adrian.
No, sorry, that's my bad, that was.
Okay. Yeah, I can't wait to be traveling again and get into one of those do-free stores and get all those wonderful advertisements for targeted at me. That'd be great one of these days. No, okay. So what Letitia said, what Henrik said, you know, resonates really strongly with what we're hearing in the market as well. I think what I would say, and where Intel kind of start this conversation when we're talking to our customers and our partners, is something we call the intelligent edge, which is, and I think Letitia and Henrik both talked about this, think about not your systems in terms of silos or isolated solutions. If you just buy a digital signage solution and deploy it on its own and don't think about anything else that's happening in the environment you're deploying it, I don't think you can get maximum value out of that solution. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is, can you create a platform on which these solutions can deploy? And then to Letitia's point, you can share data and insights across those various solutions. And once you start to do that, you start to unlock different capabilities inside your solution. Some of that data that you need in a real time. So sometimes, so for example, is it advertising to people that are close to you? Is it advertising to people that are away from you? You can only make those kind of decisions if you're close to the edge and you're understanding from what your sensors are telling you where those people are located. So sometimes you need to do some of that intelligent calculations and data calculations at the edge. But equally, you need to sometimes, to process, I can't remember what you said, 6 billion, was it? 6 million, whatever it is, these large data sets, clearly 60. you need to look at them in a more centralized location and, to get the value of it. So it's kind of examining the data, understanding the data, and building that intelligent platform and really start to integrate these solutions to really get maximum value from the platform. And then also provide the right type of responsiveness at the edge so that you can get all of those wonderful things in terms of relevance and responding to the user and providing the right type of personalized advertising.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. So the third area we wanted to talk about, and this is an interesting new trend really, with digital signage being used inside stores and outside stores. And the footfall past these stores is potentially very large. And we see more of these retailers then using these screens to push sales of products which aren't necessarily sold in that store. They become a media owner themselves. And they can be they can present these screens as part of the digital out-of-home landscape, and potentially is another source of revenue, and potentially could help with the ROI calculations. So, Letitia, it's your turn to go first. What data would these retailers need to invest in to take advantage of that as a channel?
Yeah, definitely. So I think step one is first, they need to understand what we call the DNA of their screens, right? Because we are in a grocery environment, convenience stores, or food retailers environment. So each screens are actually located, in different touch point of that shopper journey. So not all the screens are, suitable or naturally made for advertising. Okay, so I think that the first step is really to understand the environment where the screen is and the purpose of that screen, right? So this is what we call in Quividi the DNA of the screens. Then definitely, if they want to tap into the advertising, revenue, being able to deliver impressions to advertisers as a proof, of the effectiveness of the campaigns, it's key, right? It's really the currency that digital out-of-home industry, is using, and it's important for retailers who want to get into that game to also be able to deliver that to the brands who are going to advertise on the network. And definitely here, Quividi, we are seeing ourselves as bringing high fidelity, maybe the highest fidelity impression data available in the market for digital out-of-home players at the moment, because we are offering, vehicle and pedestrian, measurement, so that, for example, for shop windows are definitely, critical to be able to deliver high fidelity impressions to the advertisers and to tap into this media revenue. And maybe I think I can share with you so a case study about actually 7-Eleven. So they've been, one of the first one we've known of getting into this retail media space, like you mentioned, Adrian. So we've been working with 7-Eleven for more than 8 years now, equipping, their screens, more than 7,000 of their screens powered with Quividi. And their screens are definitely, of different format in different areas inside, the convenience stores, depending on you are in a flagship 7-Eleven stores or you are, in a standard stores. So you could go from 2 to 15 screens per store. Okay. And basically 7-Eleven have been using us and really embrace this data journey since 8 years now in order to optimize the communication on their signage network. And why do they want to do that? as a convenience stores, because fundamentally their business is to sell, product in store. First, because they actually wanted to push whenever it's relevant, the right promotions to actually link sales and cross sales. So, and when you think about the convenience stores and the average ticket size, purchase ticket size, definitely you can link sales. When you buy a coffee, you can buy, a croissant or chocolate bars with that coffee. So if you are basically, if your signage network is able in real time on the planning mode to actually optimize the loop, having that in mind, you can definitely actually get, sales uplift. And they actually shared with us that they got, up to 20% sales uplift on the promotional items that they were advertising on specific screens, specific location inside the convenience stores. The second reason why they wanted to use us is basically, like you said, to tap into new media revenue, right? Because they are high footprint stores. So definitely having Quividi's data analytics powering their screens will enable them to monetize that traffic in an effective way. And here, I think it's really interesting because they've been doing that and try and error, using our data to learn, like I said, post-campaign performance, etc., to actually fine-tune what is the type of advertising that has to be played when during the day on which screens. And actually, they started very naturally with the CPG brands sold inside the stores, right? Because those brands have products sold inside the store. So naturally, they started to advertise on those projects. But throughout the years, with the intelligence they accumulate, they are now actually advertising also for brands that don't have products sold in stores. So insurance companies, car company, automotive companies. And so they managed to actually win over new advertisers. And how did they do that? Because thanks to the Quividi's data, they realize that when you are basically, in some location, like having, your lunchbox, sitting and having your coffee or reading a book in a 7-Eleven, stopping over for like half an hour, the dwell time, and you are a more captive audience. So then they're actually showing on the screen some TV news and entertainment, okay, to basically entertain the person so that the person stays longer inside the store. And they were actually adding natively some ads about, insurance companies, automotive companies within that loop in a native fashion. So that was a way that they managed to actually attract, advertisers that was not actually the CPG brands that were tapping into historically. So and the third reason, and I finish with that, Adrienne, they wanted to have this smart digital signage large network was actually to reduce their media spend. Because they met the math, and actually it was much more smarter for them to actually advertise on their own screens for free versus actually spending a lot of investment on TV or online, for instance.
Mm-hmm. And David and Henrik, do you see this trend as well? And if so, how are you, I hate the word leveraging, leveraging. David, I'll start with you, please.
Yeah, sure. So we've been looking at digital out of home for quite a number of years now, and we've done quite a lot of work with Quividi and other companies in terms of what that really means. And Letitia gave some great examples, but I think the potential there is quite significant. And I know we talk about retail in terms of retailers like 7-Eleven and like supermarkets and apparel retailers, but you've also got the shopping mall type environments. You've got people landowners that are creating kind of mixed retail and entertainment zones, where they've got traditional information points maybe at the entrance, which are now morphing into more digital out-of-home platforms. Yes, it provides that information, but it can also provide a location for advertising, maybe promoting of new store openings or an event in the mall or in the location. So yes, the kind of getting people's attention through that, what's the weather, what's on at the cinema today, all of which is driving kind of traffic around the various areas of the mall. But equally, it's got an opportunity, as Letitia says, to have more other types of advertising, such as maybe a game launch based on the demographic of who's in there at any one time, maybe a video game launch, or, as I said before, a new movie that's about to come out, sort of building up that kind of demand and interest. So a lot of also seeing a lot around sports arenas and venues. So anywhere where people are congregating, if you remember those times when we could actually go to locations and congregate. And as it starts to open up again, we're seeing people want to really change that traditional just kind of flat information board with a map of the location, really morphing into something that's a much more tangible asset. Yes, it has those pieces, but it has much more than that as a platform. And then I think one other thing is also some incremental services that we're starting to see on these locations as well. So, for example, a Wi-Fi hotspot could be a great value add on there, or a phone charger, or some of those kind of technologies that we kind of just use in our day-to-day life that add some additional value, as well as doing all of the advertising and digital platforms. So people definitely experimenting with that space. And yeah, it's a very interesting area to watch.
Mm-hmm. And Henrik, what's the Samsung view?
Yes, definitely. We see a trend and kind of a crossover from retail to digital out of home. And another good example is almost echoing what David just said with shopping malls, land and property owners. We see a trend for the increasing number of EV charge stations being installed for in shopping mall parking lots, anywhere where you have a larger number of people gathering. You see an increased number of EV chargers being installed, and the trend is to have displays combined, either built into the chargers or next to them. And again, that would be an overlap, almost like a programmatic advertising. If you charge your car, it could be recognized. Is it a Tesla, or is it what type of electrical vehicle are you plugging into? So it could pull up advertising for insurance or a service call for that particular car brand. So that's definitely a trend that we see emerge. That it's a kind of a crossover from retail to digital out of home and utilizing sorts of programmatic advertising. So we see that. We also see in the post-COVID era, we see an increasing number of larger retailers offering curbside pickup. We see use of displays during the curbside pickup. People like being able to order same day and pick it up themselves when they get to the store. Signage is informing where you can pick it up, but the retailer can actually utilize the space and the digital signage to advertise for other products that can be ordered, on the fly. You can get them instantly on the same pickup appointment that you have. So increased use of high brightness outdoor displays, and that's definitely a trend. We see the crossover between retail, digital out of home, and programmatic advertising.
Okay, great. Okay, so what we'd like to do now is do a little Q&A, and you'll see we've had a bunch of questions, so we'll pick some off. But I have the privilege of having the attention of everyone at the moment. I can ask my own question. And so the question I would ask of all three of you, and I'll just shout out, or Henrik, do your best to shout out with an answer, and that is, which continent do you think is the most active in this sphere of exploiting retail digital signage? Where's the most activity, do you see, or the most innovation? Somebody answer.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that I could pick a continent, to be honest. I think, I don't even know where to start with that question, to be honest, Adrian. I think in North America, it's very active. I know the last 12 months has been difficult for everybody, but as Henrik says, there's been a lot of investment in things like curbside pickup, automated deliveries, drive-through activity. So people have kind of got creative, and that's driven different types of use cases for technology. So that's kind of happened in the West. I talked to my colleagues out in Asia, which some countries are in lockdown like us, but other countries are open and booming. And self-service is, a big driver out there. and convenience space like the 7-Elevens, like Letitia was mentioned, where there's a lot of investment there. So I think there's investment. It's just kind of in different areas and different spaces. And so this, I would say, is more different use cases have got different momentum in different regions would be my initial response to that.
So not necessarily the content and the way, the psychology, if you like, of that content. It's more to do with the opportunity brought to it by circumstance.
In the reality, in the last 12 months, I think that's the case. I think we will, as we go back to a more normal environment, you'll definitely start to see some of those differences based on societal preference and urbanization development, etc. So you start to see some of those factors play back into it, and even factors such as how important is sustainability and environmental concerns and health concerns will start to play back into consumers' decisions. But I think at the moment it's much more tactical than that is the way I would kind of describe it.
Okay. Henrik and Letitia, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and maybe on top of what because your question was about the geographic, segmentation, but the way we see it is more by verticals, right? The type of businesses. So definitely this tactical approach, like David mentioned, we see that definitely, in the food retail environment, also because those guys actually were not that hurt, I would say, if I may say, by COVID, right? Because they are part of essential, businesses. So definitely we see a lot of things happening in that area, no matter we talk about North America or Asia Pacific. Europe as well, to some extent, even things has been disturbed with, this on and off lockdown situation, right? I think that's interesting vertical. Second one is definitely everything happening in the fast food, convenience stores type. That is also a self-serve, a type of environment with a lot of people getting in, high frequency of visit. So those type of environment are also the verticals that we think are pretty interesting, and definitely maybe less, or quieter, I would say, at the moment in the more traditional fashion apparel, type of verticals, if I may say. Yeah.
And Henrik, I guess your view is more European than global. So do you see the breaking down of a similar story just in the European landscape?
I definitely do, yes. I see, and I can just agree with what's already being said. We've seen some early adoptions in North America happen, earlier than in Europe. But on the particular example, as I gave with the EV charge stations, we see a lot going on in Europe at the moment. A lot of interest and a trend building to develop this crossover from retail to digital out of home, combining them with the EV chargers. There's a lot of funding locally and country by country going on to extend the EV charge network. And that's definitely something we're looking into, and we know digital out-of-home companies are looking into that as well. So for that, I can speak from a European perspective.
Okay, great. Now I ought to let those that actually submitted a question get a chance. So I'm going to ask one or two that we've got time for. We have one specifically for David. How do we unify all the data sources from the retailer? How do we aggregate all of these data sources? Is the way I interpret the question.
Well, it's just a little bit of Intel magic, I think. No, it's the $1 million question, right? So I think there's a couple of different things that we believe that you need to do. The first thing is that you need to have this common and unified platform for your in-store technology, or at least those systems that you want to unify. People talked about before. Probably 10 or 15 years ago, they would talk about data lakes. They would talk about pulling all of the data from all of these various systems into one large pool of data, and that would be the path to success. I think what we're seeing the trend being more around integrating those data sources. So as opposed to trying to create one super large data source for the whole of the store, it's really more about creating integration points between the systems that you have inside your store and working out what are the key pieces of data that you want to share across those various systems, and then providing those forms of integration across a common platform. without getting too technical around containerization or virtualization or any of those kind of cool technologies for doing it, but the approach that we tend to talk to a lot of our customers about is really that build, first of all, a platform that allows you to share the insights across the data, and then think about what are those systems, what the key data within those systems are that you want to share, and then create integration points between those various systems is kind of the approach that most people take. I know Henrik has got a great example that he mentioned earlier with Samsung, where they've kind of created those integration points between POS and signage specifically, and that's a great example of how to do it. But when you're starting to get 3 or 4 or 5 systems inside that store, you really need to think very carefully about how you share that data. And as I say, the approach is not to build a single large database, but it's really to work out what those key integration points and what are the key data that you want to share across those systems.
I guess, I mean, the volume of data is enormous, and it's you can be swamped by data, and it's knowing how to pick out the nuggets that are relevant for the operation.
Yeah, I mean, camera data is a great example of, you can create terabytes and terabytes of data by storing raw video streams, which I don't think probably very many people on this call would suggest that you do. It's really about pulling insight from that raw data and then sharing that insight. So as Letitia talked about before, it's more about saying, hey, male, female, it's about age, type of demographic, it's about sentiment, as opposed to raw video sharing. So it's a good example where you're extracting data from the core data stream and then sharing that high level aggregated data between the various systems.
So I guess metadata,
and the same for POS, right? Do you want to do every single sale of every single line item? Probably not. It's more about, hey, we're getting low on this item, or hey, we're selling a lot of this. It's kind of the trends and the high-level summary information that you really want to share, as opposed to every single potential transaction line in a POS system.
Okay. Let's go with another question. Do we see much use of augmented reality and virtual reality to help organizations, or let's say retailers, to gain consumer attention in this pandemic world? So do we see more of that augmented reality? Henrik, have you got any experience of that?
To be honest, not much. No, we have had a few requests on that. Nothing related to the pandemic or during the COVID lockdown. We have seen examples within retail, typically within the fashion retail, with the use of augmented reality, but I can't say we have had it related to COVID or the current lockdown.
And David, do you see that?
Yeah, I think we saw some what I would say kind of experimental, showcases or wow moment type implementations a couple of years ago. And I think people have moved, as Henrik says, people have moved away from that as kind of the pandemic has hit. I think there are some, interesting examples where you could use it. I know that people are experimenting, especially in the kind of large furniture space or large appliance space, where maybe if you want to have a store in an urban setting where you don't have that large physical space to show all the items, is there a way you can do kind of a showrooming type example where you could look at different colors or different sets, or how does this look next to that look? And I've seen some examples, for example, in the kitchen design space, where if you can define a space, you can say, well, how does this set of cupboards versus that set of cupboards look in this type of space? So some kind of early examples. But I think the smartphone is really leading in that space, and that really is perhaps more in terms of how you use that smartphone at home to visualize products in your home environment, as opposed to actually the use of that inside the store.
So the screen in our pocket again.
Exactly, yeah, and there's some interesting examples of how that can work. But I definitely think that area of that showrooming and trying to not have everything, but look at maybe a sample or some small examples, but in some cases nothing other than just screens to actually browse through your portfolio of solutions. That's maybe an interesting area where it could see some traction.
And that beautifully brings us pretty much exactly to our allotted time. So thanks for that. I mean, just to wrap up, I think one of the key words that's come from retailers in this COVID world is agility. Being able to adapt quickly to new methods and the restrictions that are imposed by governments and so on has been vital for financial survival. And technology can provide lots of opportunities for enabling that agility. And we've heard some examples of those today, of how technology can provide a platform for growth in bricks and mortar, to try and regain that market share from what necessarily became an online experience. So my final task is to thank my co-speakers, or speakers, Letitia, David and Henrik. Thanks also to Quividi for hosting, and Denis for working hard in the back office, running everything smoothly. And thank you for listening and joining in. And a reminder, there will be a link after the event that you'll be able to download this and watch it all again, relive the excitement. But for now, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And bye. Thanks.